listening to the CareersBU podcast, a podcast aimed at Bournemouth University students and graduates. Each episode, we talk to employers, alumni and professionals all about their career journey, what employers are looking for, and help you explore the opportunities that are available to you. Hello and welcome to this episode. I'm Amanda Fripp, Careers Consultant at Bournemouth University. Today I'm joined by Paul Hanrahan from Enterprise Mobility. In this episode, Paul talks about how to navigate the interview process. He covers what he's looking for in a candidate, how to prepare, the questions you might get asked, and how to successfully answer them. Hi Paul, welcome to the podcast. Can you just introduce yourself and a little bit about your role at Enterprise Mobility, please?
Hi Amanda, yeah, absolutely. So my name is Paul Hanrahan and I'm the Talent Acquisition Specialist at Enterprise Mobility. And what that is just a very glamorous job title for a graduate recruiter. So my day job is coming on to a number of institutions across the south and the southwest of the UK and working with students, so at Bournemouth University, and trying to find the best talent that I can to join our business here at Enterprise. And that's whether that's on a placement or a graduate level, and trying to create opportunities for those students to really begin their career with us.
Cool, thank you. So in terms of the opportunities for students and for graduates, what do you offer at Enterprise Mobility?
Yeah, it's interesting. If we'd have asked that question probably 3 or 4 years ago, I would have been coming to you and talking just purely about our graduate management training program. And that is a role where we are bringing people into our business and training them to be managers. It does what it says on the tin, effectively. It's a management training program. So we are teaching people to be leaders within our business, bringing them in at that entry level, getting them involved in the operations, working with our customers, our clients, our vehicles, and the accounts that we have, delivering that world-class service they expect from us, but behind the scenes, teaching them how to lead that business unit. So it's a bit of HR and people management and understanding how they would lead and develop and coach and train a team. A bit around the numbers side, so actually understanding the bottom line of the business, how to impact those numbers, looking at things like cost control and revenue generation, right the way through to a bit of marketing and account management. So actually teaching people to go into the marketplace and to grow the business and build relationships. And that role is all about progression. It is bringing people in at that graduate or that placement level to have them progress and to move up through the ranks with us, up to assistant manager, branch manager, area manager, regional manager, all the way up to VP and CEO. Our current CEO, although she is the granddaughter of our company's founder, started as a management trainee and worked her way up through the business before taking the reins 4 years ago in sort of January 2000. So that career progression, that opportunity is something that people will see throughout their journey with us here at Enterprise. Now, what I will say is as the business has grown, as we've kind of got larger, and as we've certainly become more established in the UK and Europe, we're an American company initially, we now have a plethora of different roles available as well. So when I'm coming onto campus to speak to students, I'm able to speak about IT roles. We have our own in-house IT team. We have our own in-house legal team. We have marketing, PR and comms. We have business management, which covers things like sort of the accounting and the finance and, enabling people to do their ACCA and become a fully qualified accountant and hopefully up to financial director with us. We've got franchise opportunities. We've got Spanish-speaking bid writers when we go to tender for different roles. All of these different roles that weren't available probably 5 to 10 years ago. Us as a team of talent acquisition professionals are now having to become more accustomed with and understand more that when we're coming onto campus, we can talk about these different roles and speak to lots and lots of different groups of students rather than just speaking purely about that graduate management training program. But that has always been the bread and butter of our offering. That's what we have. And that's probably 80% of our UK hires would feed into that generic graduate management role. But yeah, we do take those individual roles as well. There's lots of opportunity.
Yeah, so lots of opportunities. And then you also offer placements as well, which a lot of students do while they're studying as part of their placement year.
We do, and that placement provision, we do the 12-month placement and we treat it exactly the same as the graduate program. The only difference is at the end of those 12 months, those placement students would go back to university and would complete their final year. What we like to do is try and keep those students on part-time. So we know that one of the barriers at the moment to students taking placement is the concern of having to give up their part-time job, cost of living, and the challenges that might bring if they then can't secure that work when they go back to university. So we try to keep them in the business. We keep them on for, it could be a Wednesday afternoon or a Saturday morning where they're helping supporting the team. They're keeping keeping their hand in the business, engaged with what we're doing, but it also gives them that source of income through their final year. If they can't commit to a dedicated shift during that period, then we also have a campus brand manager program where they can actually work as a mini recruiting marketer on campus with me. So helping me bang the drum for enterprise mobility, talking about those different roles that we've got, trying to almost find their successors, find the people that are going to replace them on placements and help from there. So there's good ways for them to stay in the business. But that placement provision is a great opportunity. And my old HR manager always used to say this: think of the placement as the first year of your career. And that's kind of a really nice way to think about it, that even at that early stage at placement level, we're already thinking, can we see this person coming back to us as a full-time graduate? Can we see them as a future leader in our business 2 to 3 years down the line? And that's kind of the mindset that we want our placement students to have as well. But we also offer placements in those specialist roles. Again, like I said, we have, I think currently at the moment, we've actually got a placement in our PR comms team from Bournemouth University. So that's based out of our European head office up in Egham, but they were based that way and are able to take the placement on. So we've certainly got lots of opportunity for those very specific placements as well.
Excellent. And the reason I asked you to come on to the podcast today was to talk about interview skills, which I'm sure you have probably interviewed many students, graduates.
I've done one or two over the years, yep.
So you're pretty an expert at interviewing, and it would be really good to kind of hear about what makes a successful interview. So we're going to be talking about that. Before we kind of dig deeper into the interview process and your tips for students and grads, or anyone really, to getting through an interview, what's the recruitment process at Enterprise Mobility from kind of start until the offer?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the first thing to touch on before I get into sort of what the actual process is to talk about how the process works. And for us, our process is very people-oriented. We are a people business. We are customer-facing. We are working with people, working with our teammates, working with the public every single day. So for us, the way that we assess is very people-oriented. So we start with an online application. So the student will be able to upload chunks of their CV into the relevant fields and, put through their work experience, their educational achievements, extracurricular activities, all of the skills, all of the things that they've achieved in their life so far. That application form is screened by a person. So we have got a candidate management team who manage all of our applications across the UK, and they will screen that manually. So they will go through looking for a set core of skills, set core of experience, and I'm sure we'll come onto those with some questions further on, so I'll save those for later. But they're screening these applications and then deciding whether to call that person in for a face-to-face recruiter interview. Now, that face-to-face recruiter interview is done over Teams. So it is a live call. There is no pre-recorded video. There is no AI in our process at the moment. There is no automated screening. So you can smile. You can have two-way conversation. You can make virtual eye contact through the camera. You can engage in the chat with that recruiter. So within that space, what we're looking to do is trying to get a really good understanding of the skills that person possesses and ultimately assess what their potential would be were they to join the business. So with the kind of the type of person we're looking for, the key to this is that it's a training program. So we are not looking for people that have led multi-million-pound projects, that have led teams of 50 people. We are looking for people that have captained the netball team. We are looking for people that have been weekend supervisors in their part-time job at the bar they work at. We're looking for people that have been on the committee of their societies at university and have led groups or led projects in their academic work. That's the level of experience that we're looking for, because everything else we can train, can develop and teach and coach from there. So that's what our team are looking for when they're interviewing, is they are looking for evidence of the skills that will allow us to assess someone's potential, not necessarily what they are at this present day. The final stage then in our process is a visit to one of our branches. So they actually get to go in to meet the team that they're potentially going to be working with, to get a feel for the company culture, to see the working environment, and use it as an opportunity to make sure that we're right for them, as much as realizing that when they're there, we're assessing and we're looking to see how they interact and how they engage in that environment as well. So they will get to meet some of our customers when they're in that branch environment. They will get to meet the team. They'll get told the good, the bad, and the ugly for working for Enterprise. We have a very open, very transparent recruitment process. So we're open to the candidates going in and asking questions and engaging in conversation. If it's important to them, that is their opportunity to ask it. And I'm very much of the belief that when they go into that visit, they should come out of it very firmly in one of two sides of the table. Hopefully they come out of it on the one side and they say, you know what, Paul, I had an amazing experience. I love the team I met. I love the environment. Whatever's next, I'm in. Alternatively, they're like, you know what, Paul, I had a really good experience. The team were really friendly. They were really helpful. They've really helped to answer the questions that I've got. I've realised it's not for me. Thanks, but no thanks. And that's no bad thing if someone is that side of the table, because at least what I know is they've had a good experience and they will be an advocate for the brand for us going forward. They might tell one of their classmates, look, this wasn't for me, but the experience I had with Enterprise was great. And I can see that this would be right for you. Or they might tell a friend outside of university. They may be a customer of ours in the future. And as long as they've got that association to the brand, that's what matters. So when they're there, they'll do the visit, they'll sit with the team. They will also have an interview with the hiring manager as well. So the area manager will go through, again, the skills that are important to us, talk through what the career progression, the career path looks like, get a good feel for that candidate's appetite for where they want to go and what they want to achieve. But yeah, very, very personal, very people-focused, quick, only 3 stages: application form, recruiter interview, branch visit, and then it's job offer.
So no assessment centres.
Yeah, we have no AI screening, we have no pre-recorded videos, we have no psychometric testing, we have no assessment centres. For all of our recruitment team, we would rather pick up the phone or pick up the Teams and have a 10-minute conversation with somebody and just gauge that student's potential based on that conversation than we would rely on sort of just missing out a gem that may slip through the net.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay. And we'll delve a little bit deeper into those 2 types of interviews that they have. So the recruiter interviews and then in a bit. But more generally, kind of the skills, the qualities that you're looking for in candidates. What are those, and how does someone find out about what they are before the interview to prepare?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the interesting thing that you said there is you've used 2 words. You've used skills and qualities, and I think that's really what we're looking to assess. So from a skills standpoint, our role is customer facing. So one of the skills that I say that people need to have is they need to have customer service skills. You know, that is something that is critical to us. We bring in excellent customer service people and teach them everything else is kind of the first thing with it. So that can be from working in retail, it can be working in hospitality, anything that is in the service industry, anything that is customer facing is perfect for us. From there, we then start to look at aptitude and attitude and qualities and traits. We want people that have got good communication skills, that are able to adapt, that can speak to people from different walks of life. That customer could be someone like my 70-year-old mum who has driven the same car for 15 years and is nervous about going into a new vehicle. And then the next customer could be a CEO of a business who you're going to talk to about their business needs and, you know, how often they use a hire car and where they go and that side of things. So you've got to be able to adapt and communicate to these different people. We look for a strong work ethic. So people that aren't afraid of a bit of hard work, that aren't afraid to get their hands dirty, that aren't afraid to get stuck in when things get a little bit tougher and realize that a tough day today is an easier day tomorrow. And that it's experience, they dust themselves off, they pick themselves up and they go again. So a bit of resilience, a bit of drive, a bit of tenacity, that side of things. We look for flexibility, so that ability to multitask, to handle different projects, to take different bits of workload and sort of balance and juggle those along the way. Naturally, with it being a graduate management program, we do look for a bit of leadership. But within that, I always say that we need to look for teamwork as well. And that is absolutely critical. It's understanding as a leader how to get the best out of people, but also how to work within that team as well. And we've touched on that already, that we're looking for people that have come with just entry-level leadership experience. So captaining a sports team, committee of a society, weekend supervisor. A lot of my leadership experience, a lot of my people skills didn't come from doing a management qualification. It came from learning how I captained my football team in the middle of the football pitch, how I captained my cricket team and got the best out of people, brought people together, motivated them, engaged them, and got them to work towards a group goal in essence. So that's what we're looking for, is we're looking for evidence of those types of skills. Now, the last one that is on our list then is sales aptitude. And we are not looking for people that are coming with a hardcore sales background that have sold tens of thousands of pounds worth of products and that side of things. What we are looking for is the people that are able to influence, that are able to convince, that are able to persuade. And it's one of those things that we ask a lot of when we kind of get on the interviews is, can you talk me through your sales experience? Can you talk me through any experience that you've had where you've had to sell products or had to push an idea? And a lot of the time we find that candidate will say, well, I've not really done sales. And it's, well, just take a step back and just think about when you've been leading a group project at work, at university. You've got the best idea. How do you sell that to your group mates? How do you convince them that your idea is the way to go? And what you would do is you'd show them the pros and cons. You talk about that. You take on board feedback and answer their objections and handle those. And then you would represent your idea. And that's what sales is. You find out what the customer's interested in. You make them a couple of offers. They either say yes or no. If they say yes, brilliant. You go through with the transaction. If they say no, you handle their objections. You look for alternatives and you push a different sale and do it that way. So that's really what we're looking for, is that ability to persuade, to influence, to compromise and work with customers from there. And that's it. So it's 6 core competencies is what we look at. Yeah.
And it's really great, because I think how you're talking and kind of how you're explaining this, it's really tangible for students to think, oh, actually, like you were giving that example just then with sales, normally you'd think, well, if I haven't worked in sales, traditional sales, so I can't give that evidence. But actually, it's, you're really, as an organization, you're open, and which many employers are, for students to draw on such a vast range of experiences to evidence those skills.
Yeah, the way that I always think about it is that, and again, we come back to the fact that it is a management training program in terms of the role, that they're not coming in as the finished article. And I can teach and train somebody to sell to my customers. I can teach them the value of the products and what they mean and things like that. All I need is for that person to be brave enough to speak to my customer in the first place. And that's the key to it, is having those brilliant people skills, being able to interact and being able to listen and actively listen, take on board, remember something about that customer, pick up on what they've told you, and then say, look, these are the options that we've got. Which one best suits you? Are you interested?
Yeah.
And I can teach them how to objection handle, and I can teach them to read a profit and loss statement and understand how all of that works. But it's that people element is critical for us.
So, and in terms of before they go for an interview, researching the company, researching, understanding enterprise mobility, how important is that as well?
That is important. And for me, that's one of the real things that we're looking at when we're interviewing. When we talk about sort of assessing potential, we're looking to see if they got that longer term plan. And we're not talking 20 years down the line, but can you see yourself with the business in 2 to 3 years and being a branch manager with us? So it's having that sort of medium to long-term plan and knowing what the role is, and also knowing what the role isn't, and knowing a bit about the business is critical when you're having those conversations with the recruitment team. And what I would say in terms of some hints and tips in terms of researching the company, there's a lot of information out there about enterprise mobility and who we are. So pick 1 or 2 things that are important to you, that are of interest to you. So if your interest is CSR, sustainability, philanthropy, get onto that part of our website and see all of the great things that Enterprise Mobility do around their environmental impact, around some of the charitable work we do, philanthropy. We're a platinum partner with Children in Need, for example. On the first weekend of September, we've got a team of 6 of our recruiters abseiling down Anfield Football Stadium for children in need. So find out the different things that the company's doing within that. If sustainability, if environmental impact's your thing, have a look at our ESG report. Look at what we're doing around some of the projects that we've got to limit our impact from being an organisation in the automotive industry. But what are we doing to limit that impact? What are we doing to right some of that impact that we have as a business? We've got a 50 million tree project that we're running. That isn't something that we launched off the back of COP26 in November 2021 when climate change really came to the fore. We've been doing it since 2007. So we're planting 50 million trees over a period of 50 years. And I think we're about 20 million, 21 million into that project already.
Yeah.
So it's something that's important to us and something that we want our new hires to be proud of coming to work with us, to kind of buy into that culture, to buy into what we're trying to do and be proud of the organization that they work for. So it's find something that's important to you, find something that resonates with you. If it's diversity, equity and inclusion, look at all the great things that we do to support women in our business. Look at the things that we do to support students that are coming from a lower socioeconomic background, if they're coming from a different entry route into university. All of these great things are good things to research.
Brilliant. So yeah, that's great advice. It doesn't have to be, they don't have to know everything about every single detail of the company. but having an overview and then thinking about what is important and, what do you really find interesting.
And that's it. And then being able to speak passionately about it. I think that's the key to it. And that's why I say try to pick something that is important to them, because you will find that they actually engage in the conversation better when they're then speaking to that recruiter. So it's easy to find out company backgrounds, founded in 1957 and, started in Missouri and St. Louis. And, the frustrating thing is when I do interviews and I say, what do you know about enterprise? Well, you rent cars, don't you, mate? And it's like, well, yeah, well done. That's kind of names on the tin, but tell me a little bit more about that. Tell me that you've done some research and you know that our CEO is Chrissy Taylor and, that we're third generation family owned, or tell me that you've looked into the CSR and you can see the charity work we do. Tell me about the diversity and equity and inclusion projects that we've got. That's what I'm looking for. Get past page 1 of the website.
Let's talk a bit more about the interview then. You've mentioned about the skills that you're assessing, and skills and qualities that you're assessing. So how is the interview structured? What sort of questions do you ask at the interview? Is that different from the recruiter interview to the final stage interview?
It is. So they tend to flow in. It's the same set of competencies that we're assessing all the way through. And so the questions will be kind of worded and changed slightly, looking for different examples. So the style of questioning that we use on our interviews is behavioral interviewing, competency-based interviewing. You can normally spot them coming a mile off because they begin with, can you give me an example of, or can you tell me about a time when? And what we're looking for when we're asking those types of questions is we want that candidate to take us on a journey. We want them to paint a picture. We want them to tell us a story. And with this, what we're looking for is detail. We're looking for an understanding of the skill as well as their sort of usage of it and the success that they've had within that. So the best example that I could give would be the customer service question that we open most interviews with. And one of the early questions is, can you give me an example of when you have delivered exceptional service to a customer? So what we're looking for that person to tell us is, first of all, where they were. Okay, so what were they doing? What scenario were they in? And from there, what was asked of them? What was the task? What was important? Why did they have to do it? What would have been the ramifications if they didn't? Then tell me what they actually did. Talk me through the action steps that you took. Talk me through the different stages that you went through to either resolve that problem or to get a satisfactory outcome. And lastly, tell me what that outcome was. Give me an outcome. Give me a result. Tell me whether you were successful, because if you were, hopefully you will do it the same again, and the context that you've used it would fit within the scenarios that you'd encounter here at Enterprise Mobility. If you were unsuccessful, not necessarily a problem, but what did you learn from it? What would you do if you were in a similar situation going forward? How would you do it next time? If you had to get your manager involved to resolve a problem, what did they do that you couldn't? What did you learn from that experience? And the best way to answer these, and you've probably got the gist of it as I've been going through those examples, is to use the STAR technique. And the STAR technique is an acronym. It stands for situation, task, action, and result. Tell me where you were, tell me what you had to do, tell me what you did, and tell me the outcome that you got. And that's what we're looking for each one of those questions. And hopefully, as you're answering that question, what you will do is you give me an understanding of your level of understanding within a skill, because hopefully when you're giving me that example, you will tell me what makes great customer service. I listened to the customer, I gave them options, I was patient, I removed an audience if they were being sort of obstructive and shouting at other customers, I offered them a refund, I offered them a discount or an invitation to return again. All of that is great service. But what you're doing is you're giving me an example of when you've actually done that and when you've hopefully had a successful outcome to it. Because the best indication that we've got of someone's future performance is what they've done previously. And it's understanding sort of their learnings from that and how they've dealt with those scenarios.
Brilliant. And I think the STAR technique is such a great technique. We talk a lot to students about that. And I do find when I do mock interviews with students, they quite often forget that result part of it. So I think keeping the STAR in mind and remembering to actually say what was the outcome, What was the result is really important as well, isn't it?
That's it. And then there's little things in there as well. You're right. Remembering the result is a critical thing. Now, hopefully what the interviewer would do is turn around and say, well, was the customer satisfied? And it's yes or no. Did the team hit their goal? Yes or no. Did the message get through with the empathy that was required? Yes or no. So they would ask those follow-up questions as well. The other part of this to remember when someone is answering those types of questions is just think about the little things. Little words. Use I instead of we. So when you're talking about the experience that you've had, I was responsible for, I had to, I did, rather than we did, we had to. I don't care about the we. Yes, we could be talking about team working later on, but I don't care about the we. I care about you. So what did you specifically do within that example that you're giving? So it's just remembering little things like that as well. It's just as important as the example you give is thinking about how you present it as well.
And I guess then it comes back to, like we were talking before, you were saying, what skills and qualities are you assessing for? And then you're talking about the competency questions. So the likelihood is the competency questions are going to be based on those skills. So tell me about a time when you've delivered a good customer service. Tell me about a time when you've talked, you talked about the sales, communication,
work towards a target.
Yeah, communication skills. So is it those types of questions they're going to be getting, really?
It is, yeah. Give me an example of when you've had to lead a team. Give me an example of when you've had to manage multiple workloads. Give me an example of when you've had to communicate an important message to somebody. It's these sorts of things that we're looking for. And it doesn't necessarily have to be that it is all from someone's professional or their working background. If I'm asking about customer service, it's likely that the best example is probably going to be from a customer service job that they've had. But if I'm asking about leadership, when you've had to lead a team, that could be leading a group project at university. That could be captaining the netball team, as I said. When I'm asking about balancing different workloads and different priorities, that could be keeping your part-time job ticking along, writing your dissertation, being on the committee of your society and making sure that you've got a succession plan and a handover ready. Also remembering to have a bit of fun at university and actually having a night out every now and then. That is how you handle different priorities and different workloads. And for me, I'm then interested in the tools that you use, the processes that you go through to stay on top of those different things. So it's thinking about all of the things that you have done in your life to this point. It doesn't just have to be from one experience or from one employer. And because for me, all experience is relevant. When we're talking about a skill like work ethic, for example, the number of people that forget to tell me that they've worked in McDonald's or they've worked in KFC. Now, I know that some of those roles are the hardest roles that someone will ever do because they've had to work in a very fast-paced environment. It's noisy, it's loud, it's hot, it can be dirty work at times, and that's not a bad skill to have, is to be able to be not afraid to get your hands dirty and to get stuck in that environment. So for me, all experience is relevant. Don't second guess what the employer thinks is relevant. You talk about what you think is your best example, your best evidence of the skill that is being discussed at that interview question.
Brilliant. Yeah, no, I think that's perfect. Perfect advice. Okay. Any other types of questions do you ask? Do you ask questions like, what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses? Do you have those strength-based questions?
They're, to an extent. So some of the follow-up, what I would say with that is, particularly if I'm thinking about that customer service example, is when someone delivers that great service, how did that make you feel? Why was that important to you? We are looking to see that people seek out these opportunities on more than one occasion. It's one thing to be able to deliver great service, but if you hated doing that, and then we're telling you that this is a customer-facing environment, then there's probably going to be a disconnect if you get job offered anyway. So there is an element of that as kind of the follow-up questions, but predominantly it stays within that sort of behavioural side of things. We do ask some questions around direction. I think that's a big thing for us, is trying to really identify what that candidate in front of us is actually looking for in their career, what's important to them, where they see themselves getting to, the type of role, the type of work they're interested in. That's important to us because everybody at Enterprise tends to start on that general management training program. And as you move through your career, you get the opportunity then to branch out. So if someone is looking to work in marketing, for example, there are easier ways to get into a marketing or a branding role than joining the Enterprise Management Graduate Program. Now, that isn't to say that in 2 years' time, 5 years' time, 10 years' time, whatever it might be, that there isn't that opportunity to move sideways into a marketing role with Enterprise. There absolutely is. But that shouldn't be the driver for joining the graduate program. It should be that actually what you want to do is learn to run a business, learn to be a manager, to understand the operational side of it first, and then identify your own skills, your strengths, the type of roles that suit you best, and then move in your career from there. And I can only talk about my career, for example. I started as a graduate management trainee, worked my way through the business. I got up to branch manager level and realized that my strengths were my people skills, how I trained, how I developed, how I got the best out of a team as a manager. And I moved across then into the people side of the business, moved across into HR, into recruitment, into training and development, and have stayed then in that very specific people side of the business. And have had a second career but with the same organization in that very specific area. Someone may come in and they may find that sales is their thing, and they go and become a national sales manager, an account manager. They may come in and realize that they kind of love the operational side of the business, and they go on that very linear career path up to area manager, regional manager, vice president as well. So there are lots of opportunities within enterprise mobility. So lots of chance for people to start a career and to really go where they want their career to head.
In your experience, what sets apart a candidate who makes a lasting impression from one who doesn't?
Yeah, for me, when I'm interviewing, it is the people skills. It's that ability to have a conversation with me, to treat that interview as just two people speaking. And that is something that really does set out the good candidates or the great candidates from the good, is what I would say. So yes, we want people to have different skills, different experiences. And like I said, that can come from very broad areas. It doesn't necessarily just have to come from paid work experience. But as you can imagine, we see a lot of students who have got retail work, hospitality work experience, that have done sports or societies at university, that have been student ambassadors. So those that set themselves apart are those that when they come onto the call with me, that yes, they're nervous initially, but as they realize that I'm a person and that I'm quite a friendly guy as well, as people get to know me, that they start to relax and they start to engage in a conversation. And that interview then starts to feel more like a two-way chat. And I always say to people that if they can get the best out of me as an interviewer, I will get the best out of them as a candidate, as an interviewee. And the way to do that is to make that feel conversational. So it really is those people skills that set people apart. And that's certainly something that we see when people go into our branches for the branch visit stage of our process as well, is those people that go in there that will say hello to people, that will sort of work their way around the room. And again, yes, they're nervous, and our team will sort of try to bring them out of their shell, and they'll give them a little fact find document that's a nice sort of prompter to start conversations. But as they start to relax in that environment, that they start to engage in conversations, they start to chat to the team and, start to show not how they're going to fit within that team, because I think that's a really dangerous area to get into in terms of cultural fit, but how they're going to enhance that team, what they are going to add to that team dynamic, what they're going to bring to that branch as an individual. And that's really what we're looking for.
And kind of just ending on a few tips, but also common mistakes. So are there, before we talk about just any final tips, but are there any common mistakes you see candidates make during any of the interview processes?
Yeah, the biggest mistake that I see is that ability to sell yourself. And that's the one that I see. And I think what I see with interviewers, what I see with students, is that sometimes they don't realize just how good they are. And that's the key. And I think with me, with 20 years experience in my career, I could walk into a room and could speak to my boss and say, hey, I think I deserve a pay rise because I'm this good. And I'd be able to give all the examples and what I would do. And I'm not expecting someone to be like that in an interview with me, to say, hey, Paul, you should hire me because I am this good. But what I am expecting them to come in and say, look, actually, you know what? I'm confident that what I've achieved at Bournemouth University, what I've achieved in my part-time jobs, what I've achieved in my life so far, the skills that I've got, the type of person that I am, is going to add value to your business. And believe that and have confidence. My role as a graduate recruiter wouldn't exist if we didn't think the graduates had the skill set that we're looking for them to do well in our organization. So it's kind of knowing that what they've done and what they've achieved is important to businesses, that they should be proud of their achievements, and that when they are in that environment, they need to be able to sell themselves, and they need to talk about what they have achieved and why that will add benefit. And you hear it a lot when you do interviews. Someone will say, I don't want to blow my own trumpet. Well, it's an interview. This is kind of the one opportunity that you kind of have to, this is, I want you to do that for half an hour. I want you to tell me how great you are and to believe it and present that back to me. And that's the biggest mistake I see, is, like I say, thinking about relevant experience and that ability to present those achievements to us in that interview.
Brilliant. And any final tips?
The one final tip I would say, and I think we've alluded to it so far, is remember that interviewer is a person as well. And to just engage in a conversation, to smile. The natural thing when someone smiles is they smile back at you, and people start to relax and engage. So yes, you will be nervous. Nerves aren't a bad thing. They will sharpen you up. They'll give you that little adrenaline hit. As long as they're not debilitating, that is absolutely fine. So don't be afraid of being nervous, but remember when you're having that interview that you are speaking to a person, and it is okay to just engage in a conversation, and that you'll get the best out of the interviewer that way.
Well, thank you so much for talking through all your advice today. It's really been great hearing about enterprise mobility, what they offer, the process for a student to go through or graduate to go through when they're applying, but also it's so useful for that, but also just for any job interview, for anyone applying for any job and going for an interview, some really valuable tips for them. So thank you so much for coming on today.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. I've really enjoyed it. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for listening today. Please remember to subscribe and follow so you can keep up to date with all new episodes.